honor and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This Honorable Senate is now called to order. Senate meeting of Friday, January 14, 2022. And before we get into the order of business today, I just wish to welcome each and every one on their return in this new year, 2022. I trust that you all had a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and that you have committed yourself to ensuring that as senators in this new year, we continue in doing the work on behalf of the people. To the members of this honorable chamber, Ms. Curtis and her team, Marshall and each and every one, Happy New Year to you too. All right. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. Second supplementary estimates for the financial year ending March 31, 2022. Second supplementary estimates, Jamaica Public Bodies estimates of revenue and expenditure for the financial year ending March 31, 2022. The proceeds of crime, designated non-financial institution, trust and corporation services providers order and its resolution 2022. Ministry paper number 1 of 2022 entitled Annual Report of the Office of the Utilities Regulations for the financial year 2020-2021. Ministry paper number 2 of 2022 entitled Annual Report of the Administrator General's Department for the financial year 2019-2020 and the Annual Report. Ministry paper number 3 of 2022 entitled Annual Report of the Financial Services Commission for the financial year ended March 31, 2020 and the Annual Report. Annual Report of the National Water Commission for the financial year 2019-2020. Annual Report of the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office for the period 2011 to 2012 and 2012 to 2013. Annual Report of the Auditor General's Department for the financial year 2020-21. Annual Report, Report of the Auditor General's Department on the results of examination of the accounts of the island for the year ended March 31, 2021, and Annual Report on audited financial statements for the Electoral Commission of Jamaica for the financial year 2020-2021.
Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 11th day of January 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm as Lawful all acts and omissions related to the approval granted by the Governor General for the early retirement of officers from the Jamaica Constabulary Force during the period commencing on the 13th day of February 2019 and ending on the 13th day of August 2019, to indemnify the government and all persons acting on behalf of the government from liability in relation thereto and for connected matters, was passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Mrs. Marisa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Pensions Jamaica Constabulary Force Validation and Indemnity Act 2022 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of a second reading of the bill.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motion given orally.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the Proceeds of Crime Act, Designated Non-Financial Institutions, Trust and Corporate Services Providers, Resolution 2022. Whereas paragraph 1(2) of the fourth schedule to the Proceeds of Crime Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that a designated non-financial institution means a person who is A, not primarily engaged in carrying on financial businesses, and B, designated as a non-financial institution for the purposes of the Act by the Minister by order subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas on the 10th day of January 2022, the Minister made the Proceeds of Crime Designated Non-Financial Institution, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022, and whereas it is desirable for the Proceeds of Crime Designated Non-Financial Institution, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022 be affirmed. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Proceeds of Crime Designated Non-Financial Institution, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Orders 2022 Resolution, and 2, the Proceeds of Crime Designated Non-Financial Institution, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022 is affirmed.
Question and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Mr. President, in the noble tradition of the Senate, we will continue the nation's debate. And today we are favored with 4 speakers. First will be Senator Delward Williams, who is, of course, the Lord Mayor. Second will be Senator Donna Scott Motley. Third, you didn't hear the Lord Mayor? Senator I've been listening to BBC a lot this morning. Third will be Senator Cavan Gale, and of course, fourth, Senator Lambert Brown. We look forward to hearing these presentations, Mr. President, and I suppose Senator Delroy Williams will start off this morning. Thank you very much.
Senator Delroy Williams.
Mr. President, it is 11:05. I have checked because I don't intend to go beyond time allotted to me. So I'll be checking and I'll be cutting if necessary. Let me quickly get into it because I really want to use most of the time allotted to me. Let me also say thanks to my family for the support they have given me over these many years in politics, first as a councillor caretaker, then councillor, and now mayor of Kingston. I want to give God thanks for the support that they have given me locally and abroad. I also want to say thanks to the people, the residents of the Civil Rights Gardens Division, for continuing to express their confidence in me as their councillor, and to the wider municipality, residents of the municipality, for the confidence they have expressed in me as mayor. Take this opportunity to also say thanks to the staff at the KSAMC, hardworking staff, the CEO, the engineering department, planning, municipal police, the entire staff, for the job that they have done and for their commitment to serving the residents of the municipality. I say thanks to the councillors of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation for their guidance and for their support over the many years, for their input, for the ideas they share, and generally for the interaction and the sharing and confronting of ideas within the setting of council. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank, I see three councillors here today, Councillor Kari Douglas, Councillor Andrew Harris, and Councillor Susan Senior, and they are here to continue the support that they have given over the years. Thank you very much, councillors, for coming. Mr. President, I begin this presentation with a quotation from my inaugural speech at the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Council meeting in December 2016. I quote, "The municipal corporation must drive economic activity. We must facilitate and not hinder. I say to you, we understand our role in the growth agenda, and we will execute efficiently and effectively. We will act within our statutory powers to be a facilitator of growth. Kingston must become a tourist attraction. We are also committed to having cruise ship stopovers in the Kingston Harbor." End of quote. That was in December 2016. We said our vision was to reposition Kingston as a destination city. Mr. President, I am pleased to advise that Kingston is on the path to attaining that vision outlined in December 2016, a destination city. Since the beginning of our vision to transform, revitalize, redevelop, and re-image the city of Kingston into a destination city, we have seen a steady increase in visitors and arrivals and unprecedented investment from hoteliers. But not just hoteliers, Jamaican hoteliers in the capital city. Some of the new developments include our hotel, the AC Hotel, Wyndham Hotel, Courtyard Marriott Hotel, Terra Nova All-Suite Hotel, and the latest addition, the soon complete Rock Hotel on the Kingston waterfront. The hotel is set to open this year. Mr. President, not too long ago, businesses were running away from downtown. We remember the days when former governments could not attract investors, much less visitors, to the capital city. We are changing the narrative. With these hotel investments, Kingston will see upward of 890 rooms added to the hotel industry. Mr. President, although downtown Kingston is on its way back, it's not yet an issue-free investment environment. There are still challenges to confront, but these pioneering companies that have been and are now investing, like Grace Kennedy, like Digicel, like Panjam Investments, with their commitment to bringing a premium hotel and residence offering to the waterfront, can catalyze sustainable growth in which more and more Jamaicans can participate. We salute them and acknowledge that we need to play our part in support and patronage if we want to attain the vision of Kingston, the pearl of the Antilles, the light of the Caribbean Sea. Mr. President, the city of Kingston maintains miles of roads, drains, and bridges over many generations. The road system supports a significant number of trips each day. People traveling to work, school, recreation, businesses, and farmers delivering goods and services, and emergency responders reaching people who need assistance. Mr. President, the amount of revenue available for the maintenance, preservation, and replacement of the municipal road system is far below the annual investment necessary to maintain the current condition of the existing road system. The KSAMC is evaluating the annual investment necessary to maintain the current condition of the existing road system, and 2, the annual investment necessary to result in a general improvement of the current road system over the next 10 years. Mr. President, our administration of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation has placed emphasis on Connector Street Network. Connector Street Network is a subset of the overall road network. Connector streets are a significant part of the road network as they facilitate traffic flow, serve emergency purposes, and critical to commerce. The KSAMC has ensured that there is an inventory of the current road condition of connector streets. Mr. President, an inspection is done on all connector streets every 6 months to assess road condition and general road condition of the connector streets network. This is being done as the KSAMC pursues the position to allocate annually a percentage of its road maintenance fund to preservation, maintenance, and the replacement of connector streets. It is vitally important that this critical subset of the road network system be preserved, maintained, and redeveloped so as to maintain and improve the road condition of this network. Mr. President, in addition to the scheduled inspection of collector streets, the KSAMC has scheduled inspections for all roads for which it has issued a road repair contract. Mr. President, these scheduled inspections will allow the local government to develop a well-informed maintenance and preservation program. In addition, this will also allow us to evaluate the performance of contractors for future purposes. The KSAMC is pursuing an asset management operational approach designed to guide the most cost-effective operating and capital investments, from maintenance through preservation and replacement. This approach will enable the Roads and Works Division to prepare a more accurate inventory of the maintenance, preservation, and replacement needs of the road system. We recognize that a weak road maintenance and preservation program would result in faster rates of deterioration of the municipality's road infrastructure. We also recognize that less investment in preservation and redevelopment would result in higher life cycle costs. Therefore, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation has been increasing its allocation to road maintenance, preservation, and redevelopment. The KSAMC clearly understands that using best industry practices for preventive repair, replacement, and maintenance would reduce unplanned road failures and annual cost. The KSAMC annual allocation to road maintenance and preservation result in well over 60 roadways being repaired annually across the municipality. Mr. President, the management of the KSAMC Emergency Fund, SGR, has also placed the KSAC in a position to respond to risk to our infrastructure. Recent flood rains damaged several roadways across the municipality, rendering some impassable. The KSAMC has responded and effected road repairs on Balcon, Tolmania, and Lunar in the Norman Gardens and Arborview divisions. Works on Lunar have been completed in the Arborview division, and Tolmania and Balcon are nearing completion sometime next week. Mr. President, I mention this because the KSAMC was able to respond because of our management of the SGR Emergency Fund. The KSAC was also able to effect critical work within the Duane River to protect residents of New Haven. Just want to take the opportunity to just explain what happens in that area. Whenever we have major rainfall, the Duane River at most times overflow its banks. And the residents in the New Haven community along Riverside Drive and other roadways are usually flooded for weeks, in some cases beyond weeks, moving into months. So the KSAC committed itself to doing works from the equalization, from the SGR fund, the emergency fund, to prevent this overflow of the Duane River. I must say that has been a success. And the residents of New Haven have expressed their gratitude for this approach. They were quite appreciative. The KSAMC has set aside funds to continue further works in the Duane River ahead of the upcoming rainy season. Mr. President, these are divisions that are represented by People's National Party councillors. And I say that for a particular reason. Because there is a belief that the KSAC operates in a partisan manner and that our allocations are partisan. It's on a partisan basis. That is a lie from the pit of hell. That is certainly not true. All these three divisions that were affected in the last rainfall, major rainfall, were represented by PNP councillors. And we spent from the equalization fund upward of approximately about roughly $50 million to effect repair works on these roadways. $50 million spent for a municipality is a lot. So I just want to dispel this argument that we allocate funds on a partisan basis. No, we don't do that. If some other people used to do that, that's them, not us. And we stand by that. We were also able to impact the lives of many residents in the Kintyre division. Now, there is a particular section of the Kintyre division, and I say this to the benefit of other municipalities, where residents were experiencing flooding of their homes, consistently. We went there, we evaluated, we looked at it, our engineers came up with a design, and we went ahead and we issued the contracts for it, and it was done. And I must say, today the residents are celebrating as the drain design was tested by floodwaters after, and it was a huge success. I visited there myself, and the smiles and joys were worth it. Mr. President, that is what local government is about, impacting lives in simple ways, in very local ways, making meaningful local interventions with huge impact. This is the pursuit of the administration I lead. There are many such more projects that I could speak about that have brought about the tears of joys, the laughter of accomplishments, and the happiness of success from residents. We will not relinquish from our commitment and efforts. We will not be disturbed or perturbed. We will not be swayed by noise or resignations. Our conscience remain as true to duty as the needle to the pole. We remain steadfast and focused on the vision and committed to using the limited resources at our disposal to impact communities and the lives in meaningful ways. Mr. President, I now move to the issue of disaster risk reduction. Large sections of the municipality are impacted by landslides. Landslides can have devastating impacts on lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure when they occur. Eastern St. Andrew has a long history of devastating landslides, including that of Judgment Cliff, which destroyed an entire village. The recent tragedy, October 2020, in Shooter's Hill, is a stark reminder of the risk slope instabilities pose for the built environment and lives. Due to the unpredictable nature of landslides, it is important to understand where they are before they occur and the risk they pose in order to better manage them and inform development and land use planning. Eastern St. Andrew and the bordering parish of St. Thomas are extremely prone to slope instability. When this is combined with poor inappropriate land usage, poor building structures, and vulnerable communities, this leads to disaster. It is against this background that the KSAMC entered into a collaboration project with the University of Chester, Mines and Geology, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management to conduct a study into slope instabilities. Mr. President, the study will provide the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation with progress reports and research outputs to inform our land use planning and policy development. Some key progress have been: 1, undertaking of the most detailed geotechnical assessment of soils and rocks for sections of St. Andrew and St. Thomas to be used for land use spatial planning. Developing slope instability risk maps to aid land use planning and guidelines for appropriate structures, if applicable. There is evidence of additional slope failures in and around the Shooter's Hill landslide. More detailed geotechnical investigation beyond the immediate active landslide have been completed to inform land use planning and zonation. Further landslide susceptibility mapping has been done for Kingston metropolitan area. This indicates a number of areas with a high probability of failure, provided there are triggers from heavy rainfall and/or earthquake. Maps, imagery, and databases created as part of this project area are available to the KSAMC for use. Mr. President, building in areas which are prone to landslides need to be designed and constructed with suitable disaster mitigating features. In addition, the sustainability of such structures and their impacts on the environment also demand due consideration. Land zonation and development of areas need to take into consideration the susceptibility to slope failure. Mr. President, this is the position of the KSAMC. No further further development is restricted in these areas. Where developments are deemed important, detailed geotechnical investigation needs to be undertaken before stabilization measures implemented on and around the proposed development, residual risk analysis undertaken to ensure it is not transferred to adjacent areas, adhering to building codes, particularly the design of foundations and structures resistant to movement. Mr. President, from this study, the KSAMC will collaborate with ODPEM, Mines and Geology to develop a landslide awareness program in high-risk areas. What are the long-term actions to be taken? One, policy directive as to the handling of new developments in the Shooters Hill area. Integration of the collected data in the building and planning process. Detailed cost-benefit analysis of long-term stability of slopes in the area, and more detailed geotechnical investigation to provide more comprehensive information to determine the best approach to mitigate landslides. Mr. President, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation continues to strengthen partnerships and relations across the region. In positioning the Kingston as a leader in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have sought to form meaningful relationships, and one such is with ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability. ICLEI is a global network of more than 2,250 local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. ICLEI seeks to influence policy towards sustainability and drives local action towards low emission and resilient and circular development. Mr. President, ICLEI and the KSAMC have been working on two potential projects. The first project is an urban infrastructure insurance facility. This is an initiative with KfW Investment and the Development Bank of Germany that will support cities in the protection of crucial infrastructure and vulnerable populations from natural hazards. Mr. President, given the exposure that the coastal city of Kingston faces as a result of natural disasters over the years, the project is most welcome. Kingston has been chosen as one of the local authorities to be included in the pilot. Mr. President, even though ICLEI and Kingston are just in the preliminary stages on this matter, it is a very significant and meaningful step in dealing with disaster risk management. We have had preliminary meetings already, and pleased to also inform you that Minister Orbin Hill is a member or has volunteered his service as part of the negotiating team with ICLEI on this very important project. The second focus is on green climate cities. This is an ICLEI initiative to support local governments with UN Framework Convention on Climate Change campaigns, Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. In addition, the KSAC will be able to access the full gamut of technical expertise available to ICLEI. Therefore, this partnership with ICLEI is a major step for local government pursuing sustainability and sustainability projects. I move quickly to another very important issue, Mr. President, and that's the issue of HIV and the problem of stigma and discrimination. The most urbanized parishes in Jamaica have the greatest cumulative number of reported HIV cases. It is estimated that 27% of persons living with HIV resides in Kingston. The city also has the highest case rate of 73 per 100,000 population, and the second highest death rate at 0.37 per 100,000 population. Mr. President, data also show that 1/3 of persons living with HIV face stigma and discrimination at varying levels across the municipality and across Jamaica. Stigma and discrimination create significant barriers to accessing HIV testing, prevention, and care. Treatment and care can result in decreased viral loads and increase the count of CD4 cells. To put it bluntly, treatment and care can result in non-transmission, and those who are negative but at highest risk can access treatment to prevent transmission. It is against this background that the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Health and Wellness in November 2019, solidifying the Fast Track City Plus program. The Fast Track Cities initiative is a local global partnership between cities and municipalities around the world and 4 core partners: the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, UNAIDS, the International Association of Providers of AIDS Care, IPAC, and the United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, and the City of Paris. As Mayor of Kingston, it is my pleasure to support and have our city participate in the Fast Track Cities initiative. Kingston remains the only city in the English-speaking Caribbean to be a part of the Fast Track Cities initiative, aimed at providing a supportive, caring, and sensitive environment for persons living with HIV. Mr. President, we believe if we get it right in Kingston, we will help propel Jamaica towards ending the AIDS pandemic. A key component in reducing new HIV infections and AIDS-related deaths is reducing and eliminating stigma and discrimination associated with getting tested for HIV and knowing your status. That is why the City of Kingston will be partnering with UNAIDS and JN Plus to develop the Stigma-Free Spaces Certification Program. This initiative will train private and public sector entities in stigma and discrimination reduction strategies. This is one way of helping people who live, work, and play in Kingston to become more caring of countrymen who are living with HIV and ending the epidemic. HIV-related stigma and discrimination in healthcare settings is another issue. It represents a potent barrier to achieving global aims to end the HIV epidemic. Evidence-based approaches for measuring and reducing stigma and discrimination in healthcare settings exist, but their incorporation into routine practice remains limited. Mr. President, even though training has been shown to be effective in bridging the gaps in knowledge that may perpetuate stigma and discrimination, it does not address other factors through which stigma and discrimination is produced and abetted. To be effective, stigma and discrimination interventions that target individual attitudes and behavior must also consider the prevailing processes with healthcare organizations and how these processes mediate the translation of knowledge gains into outcomes such as reductions in stigma and discrimination and changes in organization practices. In simple words, Mr. President, when I went to the Fast Track Cities conference in Portugal, I met privately. I had breakfast with Dr. Chris Duncombe, the Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of IPAC. And I relayed issues relating to stigma and discrimination in Kingston that we were experiencing. A few weeks ago, Mr. President, Dr. Duncombe communicated to us, informing us that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has issued a call for proposals to reduce stigma in healthcare settings in low and middle income countries. Each grant is US $400,000 over a maximum of 3 years. The proposal is a partnership between IPAC and the University of California to implement their continuous quality improvement model to embed stigma mitigation in day-to-day activities in clinic providing HIV services. Kingston is among the 4 cities tentatively selected. Mr. President,
1 minute,
As
1
I-
minute, 1 minute, Senator Williams.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time has elapsed, and I'm going to ask you to give him a few extra minutes, which he has agreed to complete his presentation.
Thank you. I think that there's an arrangement in relation to the time structure. So the question is that the Speaker be permitted to complete his presentation within the time agreed. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I now move to a matter that is very sensitive, and it's in relation to the building approval process and the planning permission process. And I believe you have to allow me the time to, that this is very important to the residents of the municipality. Just to outline that there are 2 processes, and most times people believe it's a single process. The planning permission process is a separate process from the building approval process. The processes are fraught with issues for many, many, many years. There are issues, there are perception of corruption, but there are many issues that are issues related to not to corruption. There are many issues that you have to deal with in the process that are not related to corruption. There are many, many issues coming out of the courts. There are some things that we have learned based on some outcomes of the courts. But I will not speak on issues relating to the court because we are still before the court on some matters. But just to say that arising out of this, we wrote a letter to the Most Honorable Prime Minister through the Ministry of Local Government asking for an interrogation of the entire building process and planning approval process. Not all the way to the approval, but beyond the approval, all the way to the issuance of charter titles. So our interrogation of the system was beyond the KSAMC. It was saying, Most Honorable Prime Minister, please take this interrogation all the way to the issuance of strata titles. Because we felt that there were weaknesses, and we felt that there had to be a far more robust system of cross-checking before the issuance of strata titles. So we wrote that letter. We also wrote a letter asking for an overhaul of the planning department. The planning department in its current state has a director of planning and a secretary on the establishment. That is, in these days and in the environment that we are in, that is not appropriate to deal with the demands placed on the KSAMC from the public. So we have asked the Most Honorable Minister with responsibility for planning to look at the restructuring of the planning department. We have made our proposal in terms of the creation of 2 units, the Sustainable Planning Implementation and Monitoring Unit and the Development Applications Management Unit. 2 separate units should be created within that department. We also made some recommendations. We made our recommendations in terms of, we said that there were to be mandatory inspections for every single development that we approve. A mandatory inspection for once every 3 months. We also said that there ought to be inspections at different stages of development, separate from the mandatory inspection. So when you're past the foundation stage, that's an inspection. And for every single floor you go, we had to have an inspection before you move on. And so we believe a really strict inspection regime would solve many of the problems we face and many of the breaches that occur, and we learn of them far into the development. So we believe that was good. We also said that no single building officer would manage an application from start to finish. And I'm pretty sure you know why we would do that. So we would have at least 3 to 4 building officers managing a particular application from start to finish, not a single one. We have also asked the Chief Engineering Officer to submit at the last working day of each month a detailed list of building works taking place across the municipality. We should include everything, inspections, breaches, actions taken, and so forth. Every single month we have asked for that. We have also asked that no application should come to the committee without the notice of intent to construct evidenced, so that we know that the residents would have been aware of the intent to build in that at that particular location. It must be posted visibly at the site and at the nearest police station or post office. So we have made these part of the changes we're putting in. So I was very surprised after announcing this that and I'm speaking to the opposition senators now, that the minority caucus resigned after all these announcements. And I would say, why would you want to resign after substantive and measurable measures are put in place to address the building approval process, to address the planning permission process? Why would you resign after hearing substantive and measurable? So that's not grandstanding. The measures we have announced are substantive and they are measurable. You can measure them. So you can come the next 2 months and say, what you have done here, let's measure them. Why would you resign? You resign after we have announced this, and you resign after we have said, let's go to the next sitting of the building committee to discuss the measures, where you can now interrogate the measures and you can now propose your own recommendations. So to date, I am unable to understand the reason for the resignation. I'm trying to fathom it. And I'm saying this to the opposition senators because speak some sense into your colleagues. It makes no sense. They wanted the debate at the council. The council is limited in terms of a debate. At a council meeting, you're not able to have exchanges. You can only speak on an issue once. So after you have spoken, you can't say anything on the issue again. So that's not, so go to the committee, because the committee, you can have interactions. You can go back and forth in the committee to get clarity and to find solutions. Furthermore, the committee allows for external members who are not council members. The architects and the engineers and the Master Builders Association and all the other agencies who are not members of council, they can participate in council, and you do want them to participate in the discussion because they are a major part of the process. So I am still trying to figure out why would you resign. But I end by saying this. You know, in 2014, the entire building committee resigned under the stewardship of the majority was the PNP at the time. Under Dr. Angela Brownberg mayorship, the entire building committee resigned. So it's not the first they are resigning. And what happened after the resignations? Nothing. Nothing. They did nothing. So now we who are doing something, and as I've said, substantive and measurable. Now you're resigning again, and we are doing something. And when you were in the administration, you did nothing. You resigned, reconstruct the committee, and continue as usual. So I am saying, opposition senators, please speak some sense into the councillors. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, pardon? Mr. President, I really believe, Deon Jackson Miller referred to the measures as substantive and measurable. Not me. Not me. You know that they are substantive and measurable. So what I expected was for them to come to the committee and say, okay, we have problems with your measures. Critique the measures. These measures will not work. or these measures need to be beefed up, or that's what I expected, not resignations. Not resignation. Let us discuss. Who runs from a dialogue? Who runs from a dialogue? So now so I'm beginning to wonder, are you afraid of the measures? Or are you really interested in finding solutions?
Excellent point, Senator Williams.
Mr. President, as I close, I just wanted to also mention, I won't get into it, but I wanted to also mention that the city, in terms of the recreational facilities, I'll end here, Mr. President, because creating facilities for the residents of the municipality is a major component of the quality of life we live. We need facilities within the municipality that will offer recreation and leisure to our residents. That is an important component of the quality of life. The KSAMC has been committed to building out the infrastructure of parks across the municipality. We have done a wonderful job on the Duane Park. We are continuing to develop the Duane Park, and Mr. Speaker, the last item as I close, the Marvelly Park. If you look at the Marvelly Park now, it's a dust bowl. I say to you that the next major project in terms of recreational facilities in the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality is the construction or the build-out of a major park at the Marvelly Park. Dr. Nigel Clark, the Honorable Minister of Finance, is a critical part of this project. And so Mr. President, as I close, I just want to say to senators, I can't mention the other things now, like the markets and the Red Rose Fish Market and the Jubilee Market and the Pernell Charles Arcade and the St. William Grand Park. All these works coming. I won't mention that. And they're coming because the shrewd management of the resources of the municipality. So when there will be all kind of talks will be made about finances and how KCC is managed. Look here, when you're asking questions about the KCC and its management and the finances, you better go ask those questions to Manchester, Westmoreland, St. Catherine and Portmore.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Mr. President.
Senator Williams. Senator Williams, I need to tell you that some of the persons who have been allotted selling space at the Duhaney Park Market, Duhaney Park, that park there, are complaining that the section given to them is very small. I'm just bringing that to your attention. But they appreciate it, but it's small. Senator Morris, would you please, Senator Morris, would you please stand? Would you please stand? Happy birthday. I know you're trying to hide behind there, but I've caught you. Thank you, Senator Williams. We have another speaker. Thank you very much, Senator Scott Motley. I recognize.
Before I commence my contribution to the State of the Nation debate, I want to add my voice to congratulating Senator Morris on her birthday. Very soon, she won't be referred to as young. but I'm delighted to see that she is here today so we can actually... You remember? I also want to congratulate Senator Hill and Senator Samuda. Senator Hill has been elevated as a minister, and I can assure him his performance will come under great scrutiny. Senator Samuda will perform well wherever he goes. It is well known that he is...
You see how graciousness?
No, I'm being truthful. He will. I look forward. We have had the opportunity to evaluate him in his position in the Ministry of National Security. And I have previously commended him on his presentation in the State of the Nation debate. I know that wherever he goes, he will discharge his duties very well. Mr. President, I rise to make my contribution to the State of the Nation debate here in 2022, and I must say how much I value the opportunity to do so. I do not take lightly the oath that I swore on the day that I became a senator, and I only hope that the public will see that I've done my best to discharge it. Mr. President, you know, as you get older, you have to reflect on some things. And when you see your friends leaving you, you have to evaluate your life. And in relation to the Senate, let me say this. I don't think there's anybody else sitting here who has had the privilege of being appointed by 3 different leaders. Sitting here. I'm not going to include you in this, Mr. President. But I acknowledge it. You have Mr. Siaga, Mr. Golden, and Mr. Honus. And I have Mike and Manley, P.J. Pattison, and Peter Phillips. It is... And I have not. I keep on telling people I went into politics as a teenager. So you have to judge my age from that. Mr. President, I would like to thank you, to thank my colleagues on the government side, and of course my colleagues on this side for the support that I have been given. I also thank the staff of the House of Parliament who continue to assist us in making our contribution. But I want to dedicate this presentation to some women. Firstly, my mother, who is 92 years old and will never hear me speak because she only listens to MSNBC. To my second mother, Elaine Melbourne, who I met when I was a politician, and she headed up JCDC, Jamaica Cultural Development Commission. She continues to mentor me even at my age. To Millicent Lawrence, my housekeeper, for her support. And to Miss Valerie Curtis, who in her ascension to the honored position of the clerk to the Houses of Parliament has demonstrated how you can lead with humility. To Senators Fraser, Binns, Allen, and Morris, my sisters/daughters, as they could be both. I don't Your voices are being heard in the corridors of power, and your words are indelibly etched in Hansard. And to the women of Jamaica, those women, single mothers, who head up 46.5% of the households, I dedicate this to you. I dedicate it to you because in the months going forward, we will have to rely on your resilience, your innovative capacity, your commitment to family, and your commitment to strengthening the nation to see us through. These are not the best of times. Not the best of times for women, not the best of times generally. We are going through a very sad kind of situation and struggling with some things. A mother said to me, I normally give my child lunch money to buy a patty and a cocoa bread. And it now costs me $50 more to buy one patty and one cocoa bread. How am I to manage? I am earning minimum wage, barely eking out a living, depending on persons from overseas sending me some money just to be able to make ends meet. How am I going to do it? It is a difficult time. And then, Mr. President, the murders. Not just the murders, not just the killings, but the way in which these killings are being carried out. When you have to be mourning little children, babies, 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and you think that is just, you have reached the end of barbarity and savagery. The next day, you get another surprise. And you know, there's something about the incident in St. James yesterday that touches a lot of the core of people. Because the little boy whose throat was slashed is said to be autistic. And you say, how do we reach that stage of just brutality? You see, I don't want to minimize any death. But when a stray bullet catches a child is one thing, if you understand what I mean. Please don't take it out of context. But when somebody goes and takes a knife and slashes the throat of a 9-year-old, we have to do some deep contemplation. And you know what I feel, Mr. President? Even as I depart from what I plan to say, which is not unusual, we have to create a movement. You know, we can't look at crime as community and police and all the entities coming together, but we have to create a movement in our people where we begin to make them feel that everybody has a responsibility, that they could be next, that their son, their brother, their daughter, because now the women and the children are not immune, that all of us are so vulnerable that our duties and our responsibilities have shifted. And informers are rewarded and awarded instead of being despised. We have to get our artists to be part of that movement and indeed to lead that movement, because we are in serious trouble. And this is something that no one side, no one entity can resolve. We all have to be united in that change. And Mr. President, what I would like to see is a society being built that works for all of us. That everybody feels that they are a part of what is happening. That we don't approach it according to what party we support, whether we are opposition or government, but in some ways that we all have a sense of belonging and we are participants in our vision of Jamaica being the place of choice to live, raise families, and do business. When I thought about this presentation today, one of Peter Tosh's songs came to me. He said, everyone is crying out for peace. No one is crying out for justice. I said, if the one is crying out for peace, I said, no one is crying out for justice. But there will be no peace till men get equal rights. And after the cabinet reshuffle features here because Minister Floyd Green was returned to the cabinet. And there are several people in the government who are well liked on both sides and admired on both sides. I did not see that Senator Crawford was here, but I hear him now.
Enter the chamber. And I agree with it. Several is a stretch. One or two.
You know, I have to say, Mr. President, that I don't take any issue with his return to the cabinet. I believe that he was doing a very good job in the position he had held. But what is concerning to me is how the issue has been handled. Because when that video surfaced and that group of persons were mocking those of us who were being obedient and keeping the law, it was a really hurtful thing. Boris Johnson is going through that now as Prime Minister, where people just vex. And people asking the question, you lay down the laws and then you break it? And that's the kind of feeling that we have. But my actual disquiet is about the fact that we have heard nothing about that case. Nothing. It's as though it has disappeared. Nobody has been charged. There is a waiting on the Director of Public Prosecutions for a ruling. The police have been so meticulous in their investigation that they have come out in defense of the action, to the point where now parliamentarians are told they can do anything under the DRMA. They can even play football if they want. On the other hand, I contrast this with the story of two sisters in St. Thomas apprehended under the DRMA. Raquel Williams and K.D. Nelson were fined $200,000 or 30 days in jail for not wearing a mask. Now, these two young women admit they were not wearing a mask. They had just come downstairs from a barber shop where they had done their brows and taken photographs. They had not replaced the mask, but once they saw the police officer, they put it on. They were taken into custody and kept at the Morant Bay police station. They say that night was like 15 hours in hell, sharing sleeping space with roaches, and their slippers on the ground were toys for the rats. We also saw the video of a young man who was apprehended in his house, told what to wear, videotaped putting on his clothes in his room, which was displayed for all to see. He enjoyed no right to privacy, and not even his dignity was observed or preserved. So, people who are looking on, don't feel that you have to obey the rules either, because they say so the thing set. They're not even condemning the leaders who breach the rules, because in Jamaica, I saw the thing set. And so there's just a general breakdown of the morals and the morale of persons. We have the case of Nzinga. Nzinga was a young woman who had her locks cut off in a police station in July. Firstly, the public defender was prevented from going into the police station to see the area where this was done. The Prime Minister and the Commissioner of Police said they were going to order a high-level investigation into the incident because of the outcry, not just locally but internationally. It's sent to Indicom, then it's at the DPP, then it's sent back to Indicom for additional information, and from July, the public cannot get a response to what has happened. What are the findings against Nzinga? No, you have to understand that it was in 1963 that basically Rastas were all despised. And in spite of the fact that Bob Marley, 1963 was the Coral Gardens riots. Sir Alexander Bustamante was the Prime Minister. And he really called for all Rastas to be brought in, dead or alive. Even though we speak so about Bob Marley, a lot of middle-class Jamaicans will never accept him. So if it's a petition to make him national hero and people have to sign it, it's not going to happen. And that is why some Rastafarian communities feel that Nzinga's locks being cut demonstrates the discrimination that they experience daily and reveals how despised they really are in the community. I hope that very soon we'll have the results of that investigation. A lot of women inside this parliament wear locks. Lot. Maybe 3 can be a lot. And I'm not going to go any further on that except to say that it matters. We want that report. We want that report. And people are looking on. The international community is taking note. Mr. President, I want to turn to an area of my portfolio responsibility. And today I want to call for an urgent revision of the sex offenders registry. The registry was established in 2014 and is managed by the Department of Correctional Services. As at August 2021, there were 331 persons registered. So you see, over that time frame, only 331 persons registered. So persons convicted of incest, rape, sexual touching or interference, sexual grooming of a child, sexual intercourse with a person under 16, and persons convicted of grievous sexual assault are amongst the persons who can be registered. And those persons are registered by order of a judge in the Supreme Court, the Circuit Court, or the Court of Appeal. Because the court can give some exemptions. If you make out a special case as to why you would not like to be registered, and it's a powerful case, a judge can actually hear it and agree. So I want to get to who can access the register, because that is where I am concerned. Only police persons engaged in professional counseling of sex offenders, persons managing educational institutions where they are enrolled or seeking to be enrolled, persons managing facilities that treat vulnerable persons, as well as prospective employees or employers of sex offenders are allowed access to the registry. And I don't see how that helps us. I don't see how it helps the rest of us. Because I'm going to give you a real example with a little twist to it. If Kevin Smith, if it had been known that Kevin Smith was a convicted sex offender at 27 years old, would the history of that church in Montego Bay be different? And I said that. I made a point that if he had been convicted here, because I know that at this point in time, we don't have that kind of mutual relationship with a country where their sex offenders coming to Jamaica are required to register here. But I use it as a strong point to ask you if he could then have started a church, could have had that sway over so many people. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know if there are pastors, school teachers, persons in positions of authority, persons who are interacting with little children who have been convicted. And that is my problem. So if I am next door to a serial rapist or a serial molester and I have young children, I am not aware that I have to take special precautions, because maybe I wouldn't say, call him Uncle David. That's fine. His Uncle David come to see you. Maybe I wouldn't say so. Maybe I wouldn't say, Auntie Miriam, come. Because I would then know that I have to be alert as to what might happen to my child. So I'm calling on the government. Let us look at it. In Trinidad and Tobago, they have made the information public. You can go to our website and access the information. When I go on Google and I Google a state, I can see the person's photograph, I can see the details about them, and I can know what offense they committed. So if they have exhausted all their rights to appeal, so you know it's a solid conviction, I think we should be able to know that the person is a convicted sex offender and protect our children, both girls and boys. The other thing that I want us to look at, that's now that we have a Ministry of Constitutional and Legal Affairs, which is quite confusing to me, Mr. President, because we have a Ministry of Justice, we have now a Ministry of Constitutional and Legal Affairs, and we have an Attorney General. I don't know why this was deemed necessary, and I really cannot.
Jobs for the boys.
I am waiting with bated breath to see exactly what the duties are, what his responsibility is. Senator Graham, I am hoping that this ministry has not been created to approach the Constitution in a particular manner, because the minister had said that we had to abrogate, infringe, and abridge persons' rights. And the Prime Minister, while he was addressing his conference, spoke to the need for the death penalty for possession of a firearm. He didn't even go as far as to say, when a firearm is used in the commission of an offense, you know, possession simplicity. Somebody standing up here and go to the bathroom and say, hold me gun. I soon come back. That is as ridiculous as it gets, Senator Campbell. So I don't know what the plan is.
You advise them to put that in, Leslie?
I don't know if the plan is to reduce the powers of the opposition senators, so that the opposition senators cannot block anything that the government determines to do. I don't know. And I'm looking forward to hearing exactly what the remit is. Well, you know the important thing about knowing.
No, time goes.
No, it's not yet. I have my signal. 25 minutes gone, sir.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time has elapsed, and I'm going to ask you to extend her time to the agreed
Thank you. Members would have heard
Thank
the
you,
question.
Mr. President.
Let the Speaker be permitted time within the agreed framework to complete her presentation. Those in favour?
Thank you,
Again?
sir.
I'm sorry. I'm just being informed that I was incorrectly instructed. You were...
I knew you were, sir, because I co-opted the assistance of a government member to signal to me, and I know that they would never reduce my time. But you have had the benefit of interrupting my train of thought, since you know I don't speak from a script.
I thought that your unusually long run-up might have taken a bit more time than I realized. But I'm very sorry. It was my fault.
But
just for that, Senator Scott Motley, just for that, you can have as much time as you want.
I'm going to move on very quickly, and I want to make a point about COVID. You know, COVID has, when we thought that it would have been gone by now. We hoped it would have been gone by now. And it is still very much here with us. Up to yesterday, we had 107,000 cases. We had over 2,500 deaths. And we are seeing more and more people being hospitalized. Women in the pandemic suffered more than everybody else. And according to the Inter-American Development Bank's Socioeconomic Survey of 2020 in Jamaica, twice as many women had to spend time schooling children as a result of the pandemic. Almost twice as many had to spend an increasing amount of time entertaining children, cooking, and cleaning. They found that the impact of the pandemic was also visible in the labor force and workplace, as well as at the leadership helm, where women-owned enterprises account for 45% of all local businesses. 78% of health and social workers on the front line are women, and 55% of women work in sectors such as trade, hotels, restaurants, services, and education. So there's a continuing circle of loss. Women are losing money, they are losing their jobs, and because women sometimes employ caregivers, they are not making any money, the caregivers are terminated, and so again we have that loss. Now, what is interesting to me is the government's attitude towards the increase. Because in the beginning, when I looked back at the timeline, the government was extremely proactive in how they dealt with it. By March 11th, when Jamaica confirmed its second case of COVID-19, things moved into place. March 11th, Finance Minister announced that up to $7 billion in contingency funds will be set aside for COVID. By March 13, the concern had moved to people overseas because we had ascertained that persons coming in, 5 of the 6 persons who were tested positive had traveled to Jamaica via the United Kingdom, and 2 were close contacts of the first case. By March 13, the Prime Minister had declared Jamaica a disaster area, and he freed up state resources to assist in the fight against coronavirus. By March 17th, Dr. Clark announced a $25 billion stimulus program. Listen, there was panic food buying. People were closing their offices. The schools were closed. A whole regime was established. But there were relatively, when now you look back, few cases of coronavirus. I don't understand, Mr. President, the Prime Minister's attitude towards 107,000 cases. Today, the positivity was 68.6%. There have been 61,541 women infected. So women again are suffering. 46,171 men. So we have more women infected than men. We have more women affected in terms of job loss, income loss, and we have them sicker than everybody else. The Prime Minister now has said we have to take responsibility for ourselves. This is in the height. This is in the height now. We have to take responsibility for ourselves, and we must go and get vaccinated.
You crazy?
You crazy? But my friends who are getting sick are all vaccinated. So vaccination, as we well knew from the start, was not a guarantee you would not get sick. What we hoped and still hope is that when you get sick, it is mild. But I have to ask myself the question, when I'm told by the Prime Minister there's a certain amount of beds allocated for COVID, and after that? So suppose a health worker, a doctor, a police officer, a single mother, a mother, a father, a son, vaccinated, gets seriously ill. How do you determine then whether or not you need to make a bed not dedicated to COVID-19 available to them? Prime Minister, I want you to rethink some of the things that you are saying. I really think that when you said that, what you did was throw up your hands in the air and abdicated your responsibility as Prime Minister. And because my time is running out, Mr. President, I make one last point. I feel obliged to. I do not know why the Maroons decided to make me an honorary Maroon. But in 1990, Colonel Harris of Moortown, in a ceremony, made me an honorary Maroon. So I want to say just make just one observation. Yes, he was a Labour. So, Mr. President, what I do know is that the Maroons have always lived separate and apart. Even if they go out and they work elsewhere, they know that they have a sense of belonging to the Maroon community. They have always elected their chiefs and their colonels. They have always had a cabinet. They have always prided themselves on their separate culture. They have always been respected for and granted, not challenged, for a certain degree of autonomy. In fact, Mr. President, the Prime Minister tweeted in 2019, this is his tweet, on this day 281 years ago, Captain Codger proudly stood and watched as emissaries of the defeated British forces ascended to a compound to sign a treaty that would establish the community as on equal standing with the then British-led government. The treaty was between two sovereign nations and surrendered to the Maroons of a compound town lands with defined borders and agreed political establishments. Today we celebrate a man who understood his mission and purpose as the freedom of his people and their right to self-determination. Let us, like Kojo, rise up to action in the interests of our people. That was said by the Prime Minister in 2019.
Who said that?
I don't know what has happened. I don't know what has happened now where there's this turnaround. I don't know what has created this hostile reaction to the Maroons to the point where there's a directive that they must be deprived of resources. And I find it very frightening that you could have a disagreement which results in the government withholding resources from a community. I don't know what is really meant by this sovereign nation and this sovereign state. And I think that is where the conversation must begin. So we have a clear understanding as the boundaries. I am sure that every Maroon who travels has a Jamaican passport. To start. And it is significant, Senator Hill, because it assists the discussion as to whether they are a state within a state. I am suggesting that the Prime Minister reconsider his directive, which is disturbing to me, because it means that if people disagree with him, this is how he intends to treat it. If Trenchtown, or let me not use Trenchtown, if Tivoli said, we run things down here and nobody can come and tell us what to do. If they conduct their own trials and carry out their own punishments, if they use their own resources.
You can't have a state in a state. Sorry. You cannot have a state.
Donna, I think you're interrupting the speaker. You're interrupting the leader.
I am going to make a suggestion, which I hope the Prime Minister will hear. I'm going to suggest that he has a conversation, not him, but Minister Grange be the person to start the conversation. And I say Minister Grange because she's a seasoned politician who understands the nuances of the conversation, and she has a strong appreciation of the culture of Jamaicans in general. It's not only 2019 that the Prime Minister has gone up there, you know, Senator Hill. He went there in 2016 too. So, if he's a different leader, based on his pronouncements on COVID, based on his pronouncement on death penalty for possession of guns, and based on his pronouncements on this matter, we have to reconsider some things. Mr. President, I really did not expect that the time would go so fast, and I'm trying to work within the rules of the Senate. There is much more that I would have wanted to say, but at the end of this presentation, I say, Jamaica is one of the most blessed countries in the world. As Prime Minister Bruce Golding said, we are too rich to be so poor. We have everything that one could ever hope for. Our leaders have to recognize that and bring out the best in our Jamaica, the best, appeal to the best of who we are, appeal to the best of who we are to help to solve the crime problem, appeal to the best of who we are to adhere to the COVID requirements of washing your hands and social distancing and so on. No good ever comes when a sword is wielded over the head of the people. No good ever comes. The Maroons were fighting for 80 years, and the British had to capitulate and beg them to stop it. I don't want to see, and I'm not speaking about the Maroons now, I don't want to see the Jamaican rebellious nature come to the fore at this time. I beg you, do not push the people of Jamaica into a corner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Scott Motley. Senator Gale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I begin my presentation, I too want to express and congratulate my two Senate colleagues for their new appointment. And it's, you know, there's a saying that you are rewarded for hard work with more work. But we know that given your creativity and versatility, you are going to do very well in your new role. Mr. President, today I rise to make my presentation in the State of the Nation debate, and I want to commend the other speakers for their contributions. Mr. President, in offering this presentation, I must say thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Andrew Holness, for the confidence that he has reposed in me in requesting that I continue to serve in this Honorable Senate. To my dear family, my wife Christine and my sons Krishna and Corey, I thank them for the tremendous support that they have given me throughout the years. To my additional family, my family that I engage with on a Friday, my Senate colleagues, I want to say thank you for the support that you have always given me, and you have kept me grounded. Mr. President, I want to acknowledge my own team at the BITU, an organization that I have served for 35 years. I thank them for their support. And I was recently asked a question if I'm going to die as a trade unionist. And I responded by saying, serving the working class is what I live for. Mr. President, I'm using the opportunity to wish everyone a safe and prosperous 2022. And I want to thank the staff here in Parliament for the work that you continue to do. We could never do this without you. President, the theme of my presentation is rebuilding our country through labor. And I want to say that, you know, the social and economic studies have shown that the development of this country has been built on the backs of the working class. And every time we celebrate and recognize success, every time that we achieve something, we must remember the working class. Mr. President, today I will use my presentation to address some areas of focus for the working class. Let me use the opportunity to commend the workers of this country for the tremendous sacrifice they have made. Mr. President, for their significant and unstinting contribution to nation building, There's no doubt, Mr. President, that if we are going to rebuild this country, we are going to rebuild it with the support of the working class. And, you know, they have worked with class, and we must salute them for the work that they have done. Mr. President, as with most economies around the world, the Jamaican economy has been significantly impacted by the effects of this ongoing pandemic. The economy contracted in the last fiscal year, and the statistics confirm that the government revenues declined. Our balance of payments were negatively impacted, and since the declaration of the first confirmed case, the government, quite rightly so, moved swiftly to lend some support to the economy. We had some travel restrictions, school closures, curfews, restrictions on public gatherings, and the holding of entertainment events. But I want to say that this government must be congratulated for its swift move in lending the requisite support and response to the country at the most critical time. Mr. President, the government implemented some social and economic support program, the CARE program. More specifically, the program provided compassionate grants, temporary unemployment benefits, grants to the self-employed. The CARE program also incentivized employers in targeted sectors to remain connected to their employees. Among other measures, the CARE program provides support for the sick, the elderly, the disabled, and those who are economically vulnerable pre-pandemic by supplementing existing social benefit programs. Mr. President, it also went and requested emergency financing from the IMF in the amount of some $520 million. The Jamaican government, sir, throughout its economic program and its track record of implementing reforms, has resulted in a stronger and more resilient economy. As a country, we have responded to that phase of the pandemic. We have responded very well, and the government should be commended for this. Mr. President, I am of the view that we are at the most critical stage of the pandemic. This is the vaccination stage. We are now in 2022 and facing the battle of our fourth wave and having to deal with the effects of the latest variant of the coronavirus. I want to say to the citizens of this country, if we are going to save lives and prevent the spread of this infectious virus, if we are going to prevent the unnecessary burden being placed on our already stretched hospitals, if we are going to continue to create growth and jobs, if we intend to improve the lives and livelihoods of our people, we must seriously contemplate taking the vaccine. The Ministry of Health has stated, let's get vaccinated and get back to life. Mr. President, vaccination is critical. Let me therefore use the opportunity to recommend and advise that all our citizens who have not yet taken the available vaccine, that they are safe, and I'm strongly recommending and encouraging that they take the vaccine. Mr. President, you know, some organizations have already taken the bold move of implementing vaccination policies. I want to commend my colleague, Senator Don Webby, for the move in what I consider to be a fair and reasonable, transparent vaccination policy in his workplace. And I want to suggest, President, the Confederations of Trade Union supports vaccination policies that are fair and reasonable. And if we are going to protect workers at the workplace, if we are going to have a protection around this infectious disease, then vaccination policies are the way to go. And I want to encourage entities in consultation with their workers and their trade union representative to develop reasonable and fair vaccination policies. Let us as a parliament recognize the contribution of the working class for their valiant efforts during this pandemic. Mr. President, our frontline workers, the nurses, the doctors, the police officers, the attendants in the hospitals, the cashiers, the packers in the supermarkets, the transport operators, our bank workers, Mr. President, our security guards who continue to work long hours to protect life and properties. They were frontline workers. They faced the challenges of the pandemic. They stood up very well. We must salute them. President, there's a particular area of concern that I have. You know, employment is a critical economic indicator that impacts the level of productivity in various industries in the economy. And as stated in the International Labour Organization, employment adjustment typically follows economic contractions. Mr. President, we know the extent to which our economy had contracted. We know the extent to which there would have been a reduction in employment. We know the extension to where workers would have been laid off or lost their jobs. We know the impact that it would have created on households. Senator Scott Motley made reference to the impact on women. They tend to earn less. They have fewer savings. They are disproportionately more represented in the formal economy. They have less access to social protection and are more likely to be burdened with the responsibility of undertaking unpaid care and domestic work, and therefore drop out of the labor force. Mr. President, they make up majority of the single-parent household. The government did exercise mitigation measures aimed at assisting significantly impacted areas of the economy. Tourism, culture and commerce, even agriculture. However, this pandemic has shown the greatest emphasis and a continuous focus must be placed on enabling provisions to help our labor force. So that was then. Where are we now? At the dawn of the new year, Mr. President, our vaccination status was still very low in comparison to our major trading partners. In comparison, take tourism, for instance. A lot of our tourists come from the UK, Canada, the US. Their vaccination level was higher. What I'm concerned about, Mr. President, is we depend on tourism. But the concern I have is where these countries or the entities that we invest with, or we trade with, or we do business with, if they ask about our vaccination status, that being so low, I'm concerned in terms of what it may be. The reality is that it may be a challenge in doing business with us with such a low vaccination rate. It may be a challenge for investors wanting to invest with us with this low vaccination rate. It may be a challenge in doing business with trading partners with this low vaccination rate. And so, Mr. President, what we ought to do, we have to find ways to continue to promote the education campaign in getting persons to take the vaccination. We might not realize it now, but I know of some entities that are saying, before we come to your shores, before we participate in activities with you, we want to be satisfied that your employees are vaccinated. People want to feel safe that they are coming with us. And so we must take steps and measures continuously to seek to improve our vaccination rate. Mr. President, you know, this pandemic has triggered a change in the way we do things, a change in the way we do work. The Employment Flexibility Work Arrangement Miscellaneous Act was passed in October 31st, 2014. It is without question that during the last 2 years, the government has promoted and pushed for flexible work arrangements to be made. We recognize that flexible work arrangement can be implemented in different forms. And one of the most well-known forms and widespread is you have flexi time, you have flexi place, that where you work from. You have the compressed work week, where you can work so many hours out of the week. Mr. President, there are some noted benefits of a flexible work arrangement. Employees can avoid the rush hour commutes and have more time to actually work. More balanced work and home life, especially for employees who have children doing homeschooling. Offices can more efficiently utilize workspace and equipment. Smaller businesses have been challenged in these times and can save costs by having some employees either telecommunicate, thus reducing the cost of overhead. And so employees can work when they feel and demonstrate that they are where they are most productive. Mr. President, whilst I applaud the government for promoting remote work and flexible work arrangement, I want to suggest that because this is going to be the new norm in terms of the future of work. And we will continue to see innovative ways of making work even more flexible emerge in the next decade. It is therefore incumbent on us that the following recommendations for further success. One of the things when we passed that legislation, there was no supporting guidelines to go with it. And I want to suggest that we need to establish a written policy document for flexible work arrangement that further supports the intent of the already enacted legislation. And it should be clear about expectations for all stakeholders once the arrangements are engaged within the workplace. Mr. President, there must be proper channels to ensure communication between employees and employers about the possibilities for the flexible work arrangement. You know, when the legislation was passed, a lot of employers said, but how do we enact this? How do we put it in place? Because there were no real guidelines to stipulate, to inform, for employees and employers to agree on. Mr. President, it is important that we develop a legislative code of practice to guide both employers and employees around flexible work arrangement. There's another area of concern to which would have been triggered by the pandemic. It has forced us to accept certain situations caused by employment to become interrupted, and it resulted in several workers' exposure to vulnerable situations without any social protection. Mr. President, a number of workers were laid off and had to be laid off in excess of the stipulated arrangement, the stipulated legislated framework of the 120 days. By choice, because workers would be saying, listen, I don't want to be made redundant. I don't want to lose my job. I would prefer to volunteer to continue to be laid off until the business comes back. And workers accepted that. But, whilst the workers would have accepted that, you had a situation where they couldn't purchase goods and services. They weren't earning. They were out there. Some of them had to deplete their own personal savings and assets in order to survive. Mr. President, what I'm suggesting is that what we need is a system that addresses both the worker and the national interest. A system that acts as an automatic stabilizer by supporting spending power during the periods of personal challenge or national economic downturn, which benefits the economy on a whole. Such a scheme, Mr. President, would guarantee an appropriate level of income during the period of unemployment. Mr. President, there is absolutely no secret that unemployment is one of the main factors that can contribute to income insecurity in Jamaica. It can even lead to poverty. And during the period of layoff, a lot of workers would have come under pressure. Mr. President, the time has come for us to have a serious discussion around unemployment insurance. Some sort of benefit, a social benefit that can lend some sort of support to workers in this time of downturn. And we need to start having that engagement to be payable to persons who at the time would have been registered as unemployed and to be able to get a benefit during that period of crisis and downturn. So it is a worthwhile discussion, but it is a discussion that must take place. And it must take place aggressively. Mr. President, the other area that I want to represent is that, and again, we would have seen this during the period of the pandemic. The Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act, we all know that it repealed the Master and Servant Act of 1842. A lot of workers, Mr. President, when they would have been made redundant, would have channeled those resources into creating entrepreneurship, creating their own other jobs, weather the storm because of loss of employment. It is an important social security measure. The challenge I'm having with the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act that we would have seen is that, President, there is no prescribed focus in terms of how do you define who gets terminated by way of redundancy. It can be seen as that there's a willy-nilly approach towards redundancy. We know about the last in, first out, but there needs to be an amendment in the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act to determine the criteria for selection. Additionally, one of the other challenges that we are having is a very gray area, consultation. So you have an employer, you have a business who decides to make changes and they're restructuring. Rather than move to redundancy, to effectively terminate the employment of these individuals. Define in the legislation a period for proper consultation between the workers and the employer. Such a consultation, President, can make drastic changes as to how we can improve and save the working lives of the individuals. And, this defined criteria, we would have had celebrated cases around it. The Jamaica flour mills case, whether you want to consider it famous or infamous, that would have gone through the steps in defining it. Mr. President, notwithstanding the fact that you have the Labor Relations Code that speaks to consultation, what I'm putting forward is for proper consultation to take place. Meaningful discussion between the workers and their employers. Mr. President, the world of work continues to change. Whilst we are speaking, work could be changing. And it will continue and potentially intensify in the future. It is a known fact that digital transformation, globalization, and demographic changes are shaping skill demands throughout the creation of new types of jobs, as well as changing the nature of existing occupations. Jobs are changing. Jobs are changing rapidly. And if we are going to evolve in a fast-changing labor market that will impose a massive challenge on traditional education and training systems, it will require new approaches. Mr. President, we have to prepare our labor force for the changes that are taking place in the economy. And there's a mismatch in terms of how we are training. There's a mismatch in terms of what we are churning out as for employees that might not be meeting the requirements of the skill demands to where the global economy is taking place. And we have to bear in mind, Mr. President, that the question of work has no boundaries anymore. It has no borders. And so, we have to change to meet the demands of the skill set. And so, there are some emerging skills that we are not preparing our labor force for. Companies have been forced to change the way they do business in order to compete. But if you are forced to change to do business in order to compete, which may include technological changes, we have to train our workforce to be adaptable to those changes. So we have to create and encourage training provisions throughout a life cycle. Training is lifelong. And Mr. President, you have situations where there are some workers that are not certified, lowly skilled, needs improvement in their, not only their qualifications, but their skills. Those are the workers that are most vulnerable. And so those are the workers that must be exposed to this type of critical change. So, Mr. President, 2022 must be a year that we focus effectively on training the labor force. If Jamaica is going to survive the rapid change in the world of work, new approaches to education and training are needed to evolve in a fast-changing labor market. Further to that, Mr. President, if we're going to build back Jamaica stronger through training, education, and skills development, we can together turn these challenges into opportunities. It would be remiss of me not to mention another glaring area. Make no mistake,
And perhaps you could do it after the motion for you to
Mr. President,
continue.
the Speaker's time has elapsed, and I'm asking that you give him an extension, short extension, to finish his presentation.
The question is that the Speaker's time be extended for him to complete his extension within the understanding of the duration that he is to utilize. In favor?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
President, we have a system of work that has come on the horizon and has been here for some time. Fixed-term contracts, a precarious nature of work, where this thing started out with workers having 5-year contracts, 3-year contracts, 2-year, but we have seen situations where we're now seeing the lower skilled workers having these precarious nature of employment of fixed term contracts from 3 months. We have seen situation 1 month. I've seen a particular contract of employment referring to workers as the unskilled worker. As the unskilled worker because the worker is a gardener. No, the person who defined that worker as an unskilled worker who is an HR practitioner could not do gardening or could do the work. And so the culture of referring to workers today who have a craft as an unskilled worker is unfair and unreasonable, and we have to change that mindset. And so, Mr. President, I think the time has come for us to make some critical legislative changes in terms of protecting this precarious nature of employment. How can you have a worker that for over many years you keep rolling over that contract? They are working in a permanent role within the organization, and they continue to have this unfair and unreasonable treatment. That level of insecurity needs to be removed from the labor force. And it is challenging because this type of work, I know, Mr. President, because of the level of insecurity, they are left up to the perils of an employer who decides when they come, how they come. They cannot even, they're not contributing to the NHT, they're not contributing to NIS. They have no benefits in terms of pension or health scheme. Mr. President, the time has come for us to make legislative changes in the protection of these workers. It cannot augur well with the future of the nation. Another area, Mr. President, that we have to seriously look at coming out of the pandemic is our productivity, and focus seriously on productivity. I would dare in fact to say that productivity is that key to improving the standard of living for all citizens of Jamaica. Mr. President, we would have been making changes in improving our productivity levels, but much more needs to be done. And I think there are some areas that we can look at, improving factors such as job skills, mismatch, low rates of human capital and education attainment, the complicated or duplicated business processes, inappropriate slow adoption to technology, insufficient infrastructure, even the question of traffic and crime. Those are impediments to increasing productivity. And Mr. President, 2022 is a key year that we must look at new drivers towards increasing our productivity level. Mr. President, in closing, let me remind us that this is the government that has gone and has done so much recently in short time and under challenging circumstances for the working class. The Sexual Harassment Protection and Prevention Act 2021 was passed to protect workers from sexual pressure and intimidation on the job. The Tourism Workers Pension Act was enacted, providing much-needed opportunities for workers in the tourism industry to be able to contribute to a pension scheme. A significant enactment, Mr. President, that I understand that is being looked at in the rest of the Caribbean region. The Shipping Amendment Act that came into force in December 2020, which provides world standard benefits for the workers working on foreign vessels. Amendment to the National Insurance Act to increase contributions paid to NIS aimed at providing increased benefits when it's really needed. The Disabilities Regulation to provide support to the Disabilities Act, which will bring the Parent Disabilities Act into full operation. Mr. President, the new social pension program, which targeted Jamaican citizens over 75 years. Mr. President, they say it couldn't work. It is working and continues to work. Removing taxation from those who are considered vulnerable, earning up to 1.5 million annually. That continues to work in favor of the working class. Mr. President, in the last 5 years, we have created the most employment opportunities and growth in jobs by any administration, and it is evident that we can continue to do so. Mr. President, we're coming on stream with a very important occupational safety and health legislation to protect workers from injuries and death relating to accidents on the job. We're also on track with the public sector compensation review for our workers in the public sector. This review is intended to overhaul the service to make it more equitable. It is a major investment that is being committed by this government on behalf of public sector workers. Mr. President, this is the government that is working for the working class. So, Mr. President, we must, of necessity, 2022 must be the year to further focus on labor reform. Let us identify ways in which we can examine and expand these recommendations. Let us continue to employ educational approaches to encourage vaccination. Let us constructively implement a code of practice which leverages the potential benefits of flexible work arrangement. The time has come, sir, for us to start a worldwide worthwhile discussion around the implementation and provision of an unemployment insurance scheme in Jamaica. Let's implement the needed amendment to the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act to establish a defined criteria and a requirement for proper consultation. If Jamaica is going to survive the rapid changes in the world of work, we must continue to focus on education and training of our labor force. We must establish protection against the abuse of fixed-term employment, which is in the interest of both the workers and the nation. We must increase sensitization and implement initiatives to further improve our productivity and drive economic recovery. Mr. President, let us work together to change the culture of our labor force and the workers, where they will at all times demonstrate dependability, reliability, and responsibility. The labor force that has a willingness to learn must be flexible in adapting to positive changes, one that demonstrates a positive attitude and professionalism, and one that is not afraid, sir, not afraid to display innovation and be recognized and rewarded for such innovation. Mr. President, if we can work to transform our labor force, we can build back this country stronger through labor. May it please you, Mr. President.
One minute, Senator Brown. No, don't you usually change out? You don't, okay, sorry. Thank you, Senator Gale. Senator Brown?
Mr. President, there's much of what Senator Gale said that I could just say ditto to. But there are some things that we disagree vigorously on. But suffice it to say that the gratitude to the Jamaican workers that he paid, I too join in that. It's nice to see ministers saying, oh, I contributed to this growth in the economy from where it was. It is the workers. It is the workers who must go and face those coming with COVID. It is the workers who must take the abuse. It's the workers who must smile. Those are the workers to whom this country owe a debt of gratitude. Among those workers are the healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, radiographers, the ancillary workers, the dietitian. Some who, even when they are ill, are called upon to go and work. And the sad thing about it is that we owe them money for vaccination lists. We owe them money for working in the COVID period. So it's nice to talk them up, but it's better to give them the raise because they'll appreciate the raise more. So I want to hail those frontline workers that Senator Gale mentioned, healthcare workers or teachers or police or civil servants or correctional officers or firefighters and all the workers, including those in the private sector, because it's upon their shoulders that this country survives. Our parliamentary staff, Ms. Curtis and her team, we big you up and we thank you for the contribution you have made. Mr. President, allow me to express my sympathy to a member of the Senate, specifically Senator Webby, and the passing of our friend, your relative, Jimmy Masalaman. Jimmy Masalaman was not just a JC old boy. He was Mr. JC. And he was Mr. Jamaica, because he chose to find everybody in Jamaica to link them to say, oh, you can be better at what you do. So, Don, to you, Hillary, to the rest of the family, we miss Jimmy, but he will live with us forever. On a personal note, I recall when the doctor, one Sunday, taking my mother to the doctor, internal bleeding, and him say, hospital immediately. And he listed a number of hospitals, and I said, no, not these hospitals, sir, because I can't trust the level of treatment. I called Jimmy, and Jimmy said, give me a second. And he called back and said, Dr. X is waiting for you at the accident and emergency. And when I got there, the security guard said, well, Dr. X, I've been out here for a long time waiting for your mother. I thank Jimmy for that. And I thank him for all the conversations we have had. Jimmy was a patriot, was a good man, and we'll miss him. Gone too soon is what we say about Jimmy. Senator Gale, I heard you're 35 years. And I look across the sofa and I just did a simple math. 72 to 2022 put me at 50. And that's my years of service to the working class. And so it's going to be easy for me today because my contribution is going to be about... That's fine. My contribution is going to be about the things we can do to improve the life of the workers. But let me start away from that by saying, Mr. President, if I had to sum up the state of the nation today, I would say, bluntly, the state of the nation is bloody. Between Wednesday, 6 a.m., to this morning, 6 a.m., the police report 18 murders, 11 Wednesday to Thursday. At that rate, we'll be exceeding the plus 10% last year over 2020 in terms of murders. So we have 18 in the last 48 hours. And my source, Senator Samuda, says it's 67 murders since the year start.
You wouldn't know him. He's now head.
No, he would know still. Let me get the reports. 67 murders since the year start. And the growth in murders have not been affected by the cabinet reshuffle. Because I hope the cabinet reshuffle would send a signal that the government is really serious about fighting crime. And it makes no sense you come back to us and say, but you voted against the state of emergency, as if the state of emergency is the only way to tackle crime. Let me remind this Senate and the nation thereby that in 2019, in the midst of a state of emergency in St. James, Mr. Andy Chin was taken from his house in Paradise, taken to his business place in Montego Bay Central, robbed and murdered in the middle of a state of emergency. When the last set of state of emergency was announced in Westmoreland, 2 youngsters attending a peace meeting, a seminar put on by PMI, were murdered in broad daylight during a state of emergency. A constable visiting in Westmoreland his parents was murdered during a state of emergency. So this notion that when you have a state of emergency, no killing takes place is really not true. And so let me say this, because I know when you come to close center, maybe you're going to talk about that state of emergency. What the country wants is boots on the ground in the communities so the people can feel protected. What has happened is that the grand promise by the Prime Minister when he was in opposition to allow us to go to bed with our doors and windows open and wake up and still be alive has been a fleeting illusion, being pursued, but never will it be attained. When the Prime Minister, as opposition leader, said, there's a lot we can do to reduce murder, there's a lot we can do to bring down murder. When we look at the murder stats, it represents a failure on the part of the Prime Minister and his government in crime fighting. And that is a sad state of our nation. Mr. President, the Governor General recently cited some statistics which said that 1 in 6 Jamaica go to their bed hungry at night. 1 in 6. If you run a population of 3 million, you're talking about 500,000 Jamaicans, our brothers and our sisters, going to bed hungry at night. Mr. President, maybe it's a good time to take the 120
Mr. President, it's now 1:20. I'm asking that the Senate's time be extended beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day.
Thank you very much, Leader for the day, Hill. You have heard the question. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, as a member of the Electoral Commission, you would know that that 500,000 is more than vote for any single party in our country. At 500,000 Jamaicans who go to their bed at night without food, go to their bed hungry, is more than vote for any single party in our country. And it brings me to what Bob Marley says, them belly full. Because having listened to what was said in this debate, you get the impression of a country with full belly. Everything all right. We're bubbling. Some people took an hour and a half to speak in the debate to tell us how great things were. But it is the GG and it is his resolution, his speech that we are supposed to be talking about in this debate, who tells us that over 500,000 Jamaicans go to their bed every night without food. But Marley tells us in them belly full but we're hungry. But he went on to say, an hungry mob is an angry mob. I hope we can fix the problem so this angry mob does not become active in search of food against those whose belly are full. The state of the nation that has so many of its citizens going to bed without food is depressing. The state of hungriness is made worse by the failure of the government. This government, Senator Gill, this government, you say, defend the workers, to increase the minimum wage in the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, as union leaders, we don't allow our members to be out of an increase for so long. As business people, Senator Webby, we don't allow our staff to be out of increase for so long, but for our minimum wage workers to be out for 4 years. 4 years. And $7,200 a week. That's a disgrace. That is depressing. And so, it's not right, Senator Gill, for our security guards now turn, Senator Braham, what they turn now? COVID monitor. Because every security guard now have a temperature gauge, have a hand sanitizer. So they are part of the frontline fight against COVID. But their salary, minimum wage, have not moved in 4 years. And you know who can fix that? The Minister of Labour. The Minister of Labour. And so, given that we only have 30 minutes, Mr. President, I'm simply going to call for the Minister of Labour to forthwith increase the national minimum wage. Let our security guards benefit. Let our workers, men and women in shops and stores, benefit. Let us do something that is in the remit of the government to do, because the studies have been done. Increase the minimum wage forthwith. So I can move on from that. Well, before I move on, let me remind Senator Hill, it was your friend and former, well, current minister, colleague, Audley Shaw, who in 2015 said the minimum wage should be $12,000 a week. Can I urge you on Monday to remind him and the rest in the cabinet to move the minimum wage to the promised $12,000 per week? I urge you so to do. So again, the call is move the minimum wage forthwith. The leader of the opposition has been calling for this as well, and I am making that call because that is how you really treat workers. That's how you show you care for workers, when you move the wages up. In the United States, minimum wage in some places have gone to $15, which is more than many of our senior officials or doctors are getting. But in Jamaica, we are into the low wage model. That, Senator Gill, is one of the reasons why productivity is down. You can't pay a man low and expect high productivity. Raise the minimum wage. I join you, Senator Gill, in speaking about contract workers. In the 1970s, the People's National Party government moved to repeal the master and servant law of 1838. That is 4 years after slavery was abolished. That's how long that law was. The PNP government made a number of progressive labor laws in the 70s. But these laws, Mr. President, are being undermined by employers who now have resorted to this pernicious system of contract work. And under this contract work, this so-called fixed-term contract, workers are being denied the benefits that they would have gotten under the 70s law. Imagine, Minister Campbell, a company working with the government, a foreign company, with a 49-year agreement to maintain roads, are employing workers on a 6-monthly rotating contract, when it is clear that 49 years of contract exists, and they do that so they can undermine those workers' right to union, right to redundancy, right to pension. Think of the state itself, Senator Gill. The state itself employing a lot of workers on short-term contract, going to JISTV, going to the Ministry of National Security. A lot of workers on short-term contract. So they will not get the benefit. Take a bauxite company prepared to invest $600 million in the economy, but want to keep their workers on a 6-month contract. Out in your neck of the woods, Senator Campbell, one company was found recently at the tribunal to be in breach about the terminator worker. But the tribunal was limited to give the worker the extent of the contract. That is to say, company wrong, but we can't pay you more than the period of the contract. 6-month contract. 6 months contract. In the hotel sector, a worker was suspended for nearly 3-4 years, Senator Bryan, on a 6-month contract, but suspended without pay all this time. And the court said, well, the tribunal can hear the matter. But that worker is deprived of certain benefits, deprived of tenure of employment. So you have hotel workers, bauxite workers, thousands of other workers, workers in government, and these fixed-term contracts. But they're not protected. As I said, no security of tenure. People are working 10 or more years, no pension, no redundancy. In some cases, vacation leave, sick leave, maternity leave, denied because the contract is renewed every 6 months. This is depressing. We can't build a country upon workers and these conditions. And so, having regard for the time limits available, I call on the government to do what the United Kingdom government has done, not the government of Cuba. Pass a law protecting fixed-term contract, which say if somebody is employed on a continuous and fixed term contract over a period of time, they must be treated as being permanent. And that the company must come and say, there's an objective reason for you being on a fixed term contract. It can be done. It was done in the United Kingdom, done in South Africa, done in Australia. So why Jamaica can't do it? When we have a problem with road traffic, fees, we pass the law in one day. When we have a problem with annual general meeting for business people for COVID, we pass that law. I call on the government to pass a law entitled the Protection of Fixed-Term Employees with Dispatch. Other countries have done it. We can do it. And it needs the same speed. Mr. President, my friend Senator Gill spoke of the Occupational Safety and Health law. I like to say that legislation has been around since 20? That's fine. That legislation has been around from half a tree clock. That big clock at half a tree was a little wristwatch. It is time, Senator Gill. And I know you are as embarrassed as I am that legislation must find its way back to Parliament before this term is out. In fact, the Governor General, I believe, had promised it would have been back. Senator Gill, let's work together. Senator Webber was part of the Joint Select Committee. Let's call on the government to bring the OSHA Act back. Mr. President, another law that we need in this country to protect workers and to facilitate workers is the Paternity Leave Act. I want to commend the companies like JMMB, Flow, and others who have been enlightened. Have you done it well, Senator? Grace, who have been enlightened in introducing paternity leave. I call on the government to implement the paternity leave legislation. To bring the law, let us debate it and do that. It's time for the government to do something for the workers, because the workers would benefit from this. It's one thing to say, oh, we moved the tax roll to 1.5. But the majority of workers were never at 1.5. So they had no benefit center here. The majority had no benefit. Well, Mr. President, I know the government is faced with the difficulties of the seas of COVID, the seas of crime, the seas of corruption, the seas of cost of living. And if I listen to Senator Scott Martley, they're now faced with the sea called curry. When you speak next week, you can talk to that. So, Mr. President, despite being confronted with all of these seas, I hope the government can see its way to increasing the minimum wage forthwith, working on the protection of fixed-term contract. And if you do that, clearly would be in a better country, would have been a country where they could be more productive. Protect the workers at the workplace with OSHA and give benefit to the paternity leave law. Mr. President, I'm aware that the rules governing the debating time in the State of the Nation was really rules directed at myself. And so I have stuck within the 30 minutes because I decided that I can say what I want to say within those 30 minutes and still have the effect. Unlike others who have gone an hour and a half, that's their right. The reality is, I have obeyed the rule, I have honored the rule. All my colleagues on both sides have done so in the breach. I am honored to have obeyed the rules of the president. And may this year you stop complaining about me. So happy to see in the seat of the leader of government business that it is occupied. May it please you, Mr. President. Sorry, Mr. President, just before I close, Senator Williams had left the chamber. But Senator Williams had made a comment about the previous government not being able to attract investment to Kingston. Senator Bryan, as head of UDC, will tell him that the ROK Hotel was KD Knight UDC board. I happen to have been a member of the board. Victoria Pier, UDC, KD Knight. I happen to have been a member of the board. And we could go on and on. So the mayor is entitled to his opinion, but not his own facts. The Grace Kennedy Foreign Affairs Building, KD Knight. I was part of the board. So I just wanted to just put on record those things and still stay within my 30 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister?
Mr. President, I'm going to ask that the Senate suspend the debate on the State of the Nation till another sitting of the Senate.
The question is that the State of the Nation debate be suspended for a future date, that is to say a date to be fixed. Those in favour? Against? Ayes have it. Before you close, Minister, I'd been out earlier because I had a commitment in another place, although I was on the building. I'd just like to add my congratulations to yourself and Senator Samuda. I trust that your elevation, if I can refer to it as such, will be to the benefit of the country. In fact, if you look at the past conduct with which you have managed the affairs of the country that have been given to you, if that is an indication, we expect and anticipate great things from you. So congratulations to yourself. Senator Samuda has returned to the area where his heart is, the environment, and I think that we can all reflect on the work that he has done previously in the environment, and I think that it is a move that will give him the opportunity to continue to aid in the country's development, specifically in the area of the environment. And I thank Senator Brown for raising the issue of the passing of Jimmy Solomon. I not only went to school with him at Jamaica College, but I was at McMaster University with him some time ago when I was a very young boy. Also, I've worked very closely with him recently, and persons who have been offering the tongue of good report on his behalf have not, to my ear, recognized his service, recent service to the Institute of Jamaica, where he was the chairman of the Council of the Institute of Jamaica, I think, for about 2 years. And he's missed by the staff there, and he is missed by the chairman of the UDC, who recognizes that he was someone that was always seeking the advantage of the Institute of Jamaica to the detriment of the UDC. So that's it. And I ask that not necessary to provide the Hansard, Madam Clerk, but just to send to his family a note to say that members of the Senate had observed his passing and are offering their condolences to his family. Minister? Senator Samuda, I hope you heard me speaking highly of you on the television when you were outside. But if you never hear, If you didn't hear, if you didn't hear, I'll say it to you privately. Thank you, Minister.
Mr. President, I would also like to just say that I met Jimmy Solomon when I came back, and all through that time between then and now, he's been an outstanding patriot, and his passing is a sad one for us. Mr. President, we do not intend to conduct any other business for the day, so I'm asking that the Senate be, the business of the Senate be suspended for another day to be named.
Thank you, Senator Hill. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against?
Jamaica, home of the resilient, passionate and hard-working. A people and a nation who have achieved and defied all odds, working to keep their economy growing, their country thriving, from investments made in innovative opportunities and exports demanded globally. We have a vision, now within our grasp, where Jamaica becomes the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We will not let go of this vision. We will grow. We will overcome these challenging times and look to the future with hope and positivity. These are special times. The world as we know it has changed, but home will always be in our hearts. And in Jamaica, you can always find a home. Think you know Jamaica? Look again. You will be surprised.
What if they knew that you abused her? Her family?
Mr. Jones.
And your colleagues, how will they look at an abuser? When the law comes knocking, you'll have nowhere to run.
Mr. Brown, you're under arrest. Please get up, hands behind your head and interlock your fingers.
Turn your back on abusers. Report gender-based violence to the police. There's no excuse for abuse. Call the Bureau of Gender Affairs at 876-754-8577.
Welcome to